everybody, welcome back. Welcome back to Turner Talks. Today we have a viewer requested topic, isometrics. So, like I said, I have some own personal opinions about isometrics. I did about 2.5 to 3 hours of research today just to kind of gain more knowledge because really I just had subjective opinions about it, stuff that I've kind of just assumed over the years and a little experience with some isometrics. So, I'm just going to talk about my initial opinions with it and then my findings, just kind of summarize them for you guys here. If you guys want me to get more in depth on it, just message me personally. And after the research I've done, a lot of my opinion on this stuff has changed. So, we'll get into that a little bit. But essentially, I just want to summarize this stuff for you. Isometrics are good for three things: positional strength, stabilizing, and they can just be fun to do depending on the exercise. So essentially, isometrics are the concentric holding of a specific movement. In this diagram, it's bicep curls. So it's just the concentric part of a bicep curl. And then, with any other muscle group, it's just the concentric part of whatever muscle group you're trying to activate. So a lot of people do, bicep holds, a lot of static holds, which we'll get into later with like bench, squat, and some other stuff, even rack pushes. We'll get into that later as well. But it's just the contraction of a specific muscle group or individual muscle. So they're really good for using, your strength in a specific position. So if you want to get really good at the finishing point of a bench, then you'll do static holds. They're also good for preparing your CNS for maximum loads. And they're good for stabilizing because you're going to have to use a lot of stabilization muscles in order to hold a position for a certain amount of time at maximum effort. They're good for improving strength in specific positions, but not necessarily good for improving strength overall. They can't, really improve your speed or quick firing athletic performance. We'll get into how they can be helpful for athletes. They're good for injuries because you don't need a range of motion, so you're actually not using joints and tendons that much. They're very helpful for people with arthritis, so who already have pre-existing joint pain or issues with their tissues surrounding their muscle. And they're good for people with extreme high blood pressure because when you're using maximum output and you're getting good blood flow to your muscles consistently without movement, it can be good for that. And then, it's good for explosiveness. So for those power lifters, a lot of them do heavy concentric holds with some sort of weight to prepare themselves for that explosive effort. Static stretching is a type of isometric movement. Static stretching is not recommended at any capacity. So I know for me personally, throughout high school and middle school, much of what we did in preparation before sporting events would be static stretching, even before practices. And static stretching studies actually show that this is one of the worst things you can do for your body and muscles before any kind of extraneous physical activity, especially running, which is very popular for runners. And a lot of studies show that it's just awful. So a lot of what I base my new knowledge off of is from two studies. One's from the Mayo Clinic, which is part of what you see on screen. They took about 16 males. They split them into two groups. Essentially, you'll see a table here in a second. They set part of the group's intensity at 60 to 80% throughout a 3-week period. So 2 of their sessions were at 60% output, 3 were at 70%, and 3 were at 80%. So they had 8 total sessions. They also split them into two groups. The ST group, which was maximal voluntary strength, essentially just doing 1 rep maxes every session multiple times. 60% 1 rep max, 70% 1 rep max, 80%, and so on. And then they finished with a 90%, but their reps were a lot lower. And then they had a COMB, which was muscle size and maximum strength output. So they were doing a lot more reps and measuring the size of the muscle. So both of these groups both had their muscle size and muscle strength measured at the end of the study. Mechanical stress was also measured. Their effects on mechanical stress, which is directly associated with mechanical tension, which, as we know, is directly correlated to protein synthesis and how your muscles get stronger throughout time. It's got a direct correlation with protein synthesis. So what they found with these two groups is there really wasn't much difference between the strength gains from the guys that were doing 1 rep isometrics and the guys that were doing multiple rep isometrics. The output for the strength guys was much higher, but because they were lifting so much more infrequently, they had about the same strength gains. But the COMB group, which was a little more focused on muscle hypertrophy, they were still doing, high weight, low reps, but their reps were higher than the strength group. And they saw little more muscle growth. They were doing isometric holds with their biceps as well as their quads. They saw significantly more growth in the biceps. They didn't really go into, how many other variables play into this, which our second study we talk about does. But it's kind of interesting that they were still able to grow. I couldn't find anything on a control group that they had with guys that just worked out normally, but that would be hard to do because, what's a normal workout? But the second study I looked at was much more conclusive and had better evidence and just a better explanation. But I just wanted to give you guys an idea of what the first one looked like, just to establish kind of a baseline. The second study, and the one that really stood out more to me, was a journal posted in the JSAMS Plus publisher. This one was more interesting because it directly looked at the difference and gains from isometric resistance training and dynamic resistance training, which was actually the studies that I was kind of more interested by. The first one was just the first one I found, so I read it just as kind of, I wanted to know if this was even feasible to work or to be beneficial. This one was a lot more interesting. So they split up two groups. One did isometric work, one did dynamic resistance training. We'll get into more the real world application of these findings, but essentially dynamic exercises train your ability to generate force through a movement, and they found that isometric exercises train your ability to sustain force under tension. So what this means is, say you're moving boxes, right? You're going to be able to move a lot heavier boxes from A to B if you do dynamic exercises. But if you want to say, you got to hold a box over your head for a long time. You guys ever seen that Lowe's video where the guy's getting crushed by the box and he's like, help me, help. See, that guy needed to be doing isometrics because he would have been able to hold that box a lot better. Now, he wouldn't have been able to move it easier, but your, extensive isometric training helps with those long holds in specific positions, specific strength positions. They used 3 types of machines. They used a chest press machine, a leg press machine, and a bicep curl machine. All 3 of these measured maximum output for the isometric guys, and then they had some dynamic training exercise movements that were on the same machines, but they measured it differently. So essentially, they let these groups, for the isometric group, they said, hey, get on this machine, press as hard as you can. It's not going to move, but press as hard as you can, and do it a few times. Same for the chest press, and same for the bicep curl. And then they kind of had the other group just train with these same machines, but dynamically. So they said, hey, 6 to 8 reps, and the isometric group also did the same amount of sets and reps, but obviously the weight's not moving. They're just trying to give maximum output. And they showed different line graphs, and obviously the graphs descended as they did more reps, just like the other group. So, the graph and the rate of exertion was the same. However, they found at the end of the study that isometrics offer a promising alternative by potentially overcoming joint angle specificity. So what does that mean for, just the average Joe? Essentially, for people that need to hold a position longer than others, say you are a powerlifter, an intense powerlifter, and you got to hold weight over your head, you should be doing isometrics, because that final stage where you're holding 300 plus pounds fully locked out above your head, you need to be ready for that. And dynamic exercises are going to help you get it there, but isometrics are going to help you stay in that position. So it's single angle training. So if you are working on a single point of an exercise, isometrics are good for you. Say you can't get the bar off of your chest. You just can't. You're benching heavy. You always fail right at your chest on max outs. Isometrics would be good for you. And what you do is you get the bar low to your chest where you're failing, you put bars right above it, and then you push against the bar as hard as you can. The bar's not going to move, but you're going to physically exert yourself as much as possible. In weights, you can't really do that because once, there's a lot more stabilization going on, especially with free weights, but you are just maximally outputting with those muscles in that specific area. And that will help you beat those plateaus in specific areas. If you're having trouble with the entire movement, they're not going to help that much, and you need to be doing dynamic exercises heavy and intensely. But if you are stuck in one specific spot, like for me personally, it's my lockout on a heavy bench. I can get it off my chest. I can't lock it out. I need to be doing isometrics at the point where I have trouble locking it out. This is where isometrics are conclusively helpful. They're not great for, everyday people. We're going to get into how they're helpful for athletes and specific types of trainees, though. So you just saw a bunch of pictures. I think it was 3 pictures of specific strongmen doing different events. And in these events, they are statically holding. They are holding pillars. They are holding logs. They are holding hammer, as you see in the current picture. These athletes need to do isometric holds because they have to stay in that position for a long time. Of course, they have to lift it to that position first, but the main point is to hold it there for as long as possible. Isometrics for these types of things are very important, but the average Joe isn't doing that. So athletically, what do athletes need to do in isometrics to be successful? Or if you want to be explosive or just more dynamic, which it sounds counterintuitive because there's dynamic and there's isometric, but if you are an athlete, how do isometrics help you? For athletes, plain and simple, you want to hold isometrics where your knees are flexed. A lot of the time, you're going to be doing lower body stuff. Your knees should be either half 90 degrees flexed or completely out. You need to be holding these positions strong because this is where your body and your tendons are going to have the most load. So you need to be able to equip muscles to, take heavy impact or heavy loads. These are really the only points where athletes are going to want to do isometrics. Even if you're a power lifter or just a bodybuilder, isometrics in these positions can be helpful because you're not going to injure yourself as much. Your muscles are going to be recruiting in the right spots and at the right times. So I think that concludes, kind of the scientific findings or the findings I had in my research. Sorry for the longer video. I told you guys I would tell you what I personally thought before I started researching, and I thought isometrics were kind of bullshit. I thought they were kind of pointless, kind of useless. I'd done static holds on bench in the past, and I could see that helping. But any other movement, I thought they were kind of pointless. But after my research, I think I'll be incorporating them in lifts that I find difficult specifically. Maybe some points on my squats, maybe some points even on biceps. But not on everything, obviously. It's really cool to see how they help these strong men and how they help some powerlifters, especially in like snatch holds when they have to hold it over their heads. But I think I'm going to end it there. I hate to make it any longer. Thank you if you made it to the end of the video. Please leave a comment just discussing how you felt about the video, any things that you want to add or disagree with. And then, let me know what you guys want to see next for the next video. I'm going to try to keep them shorter than this one. I just kind of had a bunch of info logic dump that I wanted to, get across to you guys because I really didn't think that this would be that interesting of a topic. And there's a lot more that I could discuss. I'm not a professional or an expert, but if you guys want to have a personal conversation, I'd be glad to do so. I do have quite a bit of knowledge on it now. But it was just super interesting. Wanted to get this one out to you guys. Just let me know what you want to see in the future. I hope you enjoyed it. Thank you guys so much.